The new members of the European Parliament, MEPs, have been elected. The once-in-5-year elections that took place early June resulted in the political groups EPP and ECR growing and Renew losing several seats in Parliament. One of the first steps for the national political parties that have been elected is to establish or re-establish the cooperation with one of the European political groups. A pretty big share of the elected MEPs is not part of a European group, or not yet. The following step is deciding which MEPs will take part in one of the various committees of the European Parliament. These committees are subject-specific groups. The forming of these groups is incredibly important, and we are following the developments with great interest. We hope that MEPs with knowledge of and experience with the shipping sector take part in the for shipping relevant committees. The most relevant committees for shipping are the Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs, ECON, the Committee on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety, ENVI, the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, ITER, and, of course, the Committee on Transport and Tourism, TRAN.
Here in Brussels, two important ministerial councils were held in June, the Environmental Council and the Transport Council. What are the main takeaways from both councils? Let's start with a last-minute change of position by Austria regarding the nature restoration law, which allows the approval of this highly discussed piece of legislation. The law focuses on restoring European ecosystems, including marine and coastal environments. Moving on to the Transport Council, the central discussion here was extending the role of the European Maritime Safety Agency, which focuses on a safe, secure, green and competitive shipping sector. The ministers agreed on extending the role, which allows the negotiations with the European Parliament to begin. Die was perfect.
Recently, the KVNR had the honor to host the board meeting of the European Community of Shipowners Associations, EXA, in Rotterdam. Part of the dialogue was a possible European maritime industry strategy. With the new work program of the European Commission coming up later this year, it is now up to the European maritime associations, such as EXA, to identify what is important to create an even more sustainable and competitive maritime sector, and what the key elements of a European maritime industry strategy should be. One important element to make daily maritime operations more efficient is the Maritime Single Window. And we asked our expert to go more in-depth on this topic.
Thank you, Marjolein. Before a ship arrives in a port, the captain needs to send much information about the ship, the crew and the cargo. In 2010, the EU introduced the Maritime Single Window concept. The aim was to make it easier for ships to send the information. Unfortunately, EU member states were given too much freedom in the national implementation. Result? Many ports developed their own form, requiring captains to use it. So, instead of making it easier, it became more difficult and burdensome for captains to send the information to ports. That is why in 2019 the EU adopted a new regulation, replacing the current EU directive by 2025. With this new regulation, the EU aims to improve the Maritime Single Window concept by harmonizing and standardizing the way of reporting by ships to the ports in the EU.
During the day of the Seafarer event in Antwerp, organized by EXA at the Antwerp Maritime Academy, the conversation focused mainly on improving the well-being of seafarers and how digitalization can support the life of seafarers. Events like these make us aware of the challenges ahead, but also the many opportunities to improve the many careers at sea.